The political storm surrounding Angela Rayner has grown into an all-consuming fire, igniting fierce debates and dividing opinions across the United Kingdom. The Chief Justice's ruling against Rayner in the election rigging scandal has rocked the political landscape, revealing an unsettling truth about Labour's tactics and sparking an intense public backlash. Katie Hopkins, a vocal critic of the Labour Party, did not waste any time seizing the moment. In a live broadcast that quickly went viral, Hopkins tore apart Rayner's carefully crafted public image, exposing what she argued were Labour's most secretive and manipulative strategies. The claim that the party was simply inefficient or out of touch with the electorate has now been replaced by something far more sinister: the deliberate undermining of the democratic process. According to Hopkins, this wasn't a simple case of political miscalculation or incompetence. It was an intentional, coordinated effort to rig the system and secure Labour's hold on power, no matter the cost. The public, already disillusioned by years of political maneuvering and promises unfulfilled, watched as Hopkins boldly revealed the hidden side of Labour's leadership under Rayner's direction. She accused the party of using every tool at their disposal to suppress opposition, particularly the growing influence of Reform UK. Labour's recent actions, which were portrayed as necessary administrative moves to delay local elections, now appeared in a very different light. One that showed Labour trying to delay and suppress democratic expression to maintain political control. Rayner's role in this, according to Hopkins, was not just as a passive figurehead, but as an active architect of the party's cynical tactics. What started as an internal political struggle soon spiraled into something much larger, as Hopkins unleashed her scathing critique, revealing a web of lies and manipulation that Labour had been weaving behind the scenes. Her on-air comments forced the public to face a bitter truth: that the very party that claimed to represent the working class, fairness and democracy had long abandoned those ideals. Instead, they were accused of manipulating the political system to maintain power, turning the democratic process into a tool of self-preservation. Hopkins' explosive statements underscored the reality that Rayner's actions were not merely a slip-up, but part of a larger strategy to hold on to power. The revelation of these facts has sent shockwaves across the nation, leading many to reconsider their trust in the Labour Party. And it has raised crucial questions about the future of British politics. Rayner's downfall and the implications of the court ruling have opened a Pandora's box of questions that demand answers from both her and the Labour Party as a whole. As the political fallout from Angela Rayner's scandal continued to escalate, the broader implications for the Labour Party began to surface. With the party's credibility now hanging by a thread, Katie Hopkins, relentless in her criticism, emphasized the hypocrisy of Labour's actions, accusing the party of undermining the very democratic principles it had long professed to uphold. She argued that the party, once seen as the defender of the working class, had been exposed as a political machine desperate to hold on to power by any means necessary. The revelations were stark. Labour had manipulated the electoral process, delaying elections under the guise of administrative necessity, when in reality the goal was to suppress opposition and secure its grip on power. Hopkins painted a chilling picture of a party willing to rewrite the rules of democracy to ensure its dominance. And in doing so, she claimed, Labour was betraying the very people it claimed to serve. The court ruling against Rayner confirmed many of these suspicions, with internal documents, leaked memos and testimonies from party insiders exposing the depth of Labour's efforts to tilt the system in their favour. According to Hopkins, the party's actions went far beyond simple political manoeuvring. This was about maintaining a monopoly on power, even at the expense of undermining the integrity of the electoral system. Hopkins made it clear that this was not merely a political failure, it was a systemic abuse of power. By trying to delay local elections, Labour hoped to suppress the rise of Reform UK, whose populist message had been resonating with voters, particularly those disillusioned by the traditional political elites. This growing opposition, led by Nigel Farage, had the potential to erode Labour's support base, especially among working-class communities. Hopkins accused Rayner and the Labour leadership of playing a dangerous game, trying to secure temporary victories at the expense of long-term democratic values. As the truth came to light, it became clear that the Labour Party had crossed a line, not just by delaying elections, but by attempting to manipulate the entire political landscape to favour their own survival. The scandal that had begun as a minor political issue now threatened to engulf the party entirely. The public's trust in Labour had been shattered, and with each new revelation, their position seemed increasingly untenable. Labour's response to the crisis, or lack thereof, only deepened the perception that the party was too entrenched in its own corruption to rectify the damage. This wasn't just about a delay in elections. It was about the very foundation of the political system itself. Rayner's actions, and the subsequent fallout, had exposed a party more concerned with preserving power than serving the people. The consequences of these actions would continue to reverberate, with many questioning whether Labour could ever regain its integrity. As the scandal surrounding Angela Rayner continued to unfold, the impact on the Labour Party was both profound and far-reaching. The court ruling, which exposed the party's attempts to manipulate the electoral process, not only damaged Rayner's personal political career, but also sparked a larger crisis within the party itself. Labour's response to the growing public outcry was a mixture of denial, deflection, and ultimately damage control. While Rayner and the party tried to downplay the significance of the court's verdict, it became increasingly clear that the trust Labour had once enjoyed with the British public was slipping away. What had initially appeared to be a well-intentioned, albeit misguided attempt to manage election scheduling had now been revealed as a calculated strategy to suppress opposition and protect Labour's shrinking political power. The public backlash was swift and intense. Social media platforms were flooded with criticism, and headlines from across the political spectrum painted Labour as a party willing to go to any lengths to hold on to control. Katie Hopkins, a staunch critic of the party, seized on this moment, capitalizing on the chaos to further expose Labour's misdeeds. She didn't just criticize Rayner's actions, she accused the entire party of undermining the very democratic principles it claimed to defend. Hopkins argued that Labour's leaders had lost their moral high ground, and that Rayner's actions were not an isolated incident but part of a larger pattern of systemic corruption and manipulation. For many, this scandal confirmed their worst fears about Labour, that it had become more focused on political survival than on the needs and welfare of the people it purported to represent. The fact that Rayner had attempted to delay local elections, ostensibly to allow for council restructuring, had already raised eyebrows. But the court's verdict that the delay was politically motivated crossed a line for many. The revelation that Labour was actively working to suppress opposition, particularly the rising influence of Reform UK, exposed a deep-seated fear within the party that it was losing its relevance and support. The situation became even more dire as more and more Labour MPs began to speak out, expressing their dissatisfaction with the party's handling of the crisis. Behind closed doors, some MPs voiced concerns that the party's failure to address the scandal head-on could result in irreparable damage to its reputation. Calls for Rayner's resignation grew louder, with critics arguing that her actions had compromised Labour's core values beyond repair. Yet, the leadership's indecision on whether to remove her or not only made the party appear more divided, increasing the pressure on Starmer to take decisive action. With the Labour Party's credibility hanging by a thread, it was unclear whether it could recover from this scandal. While Rayner's future in the party seemed uncertain, the impact on Labour as a whole was far more significant. The crisis had exposed a party on the brink, struggling to maintain its relevance in an increasingly polarized political landscape. As the fallout from Angela Rayner's scandal deepened, the political landscape in Britain was changing before everyone's eyes. The damage to Labour's image was becoming undeniable, and its ability to maintain control of the narrative was slipping away. The public, once supportive of the party's promises of fairness and transparency, now found themselves grappling with the reality that Labour's leadership had been caught in a web of manipulation and deceit. Rayner, once seen as a rising star within the party, had now become a symbol of everything that was wrong with Labour's leadership. The scandal had exposed not only her actions but also a systemic issue within the party itself. Labour's inability to take responsibility for its actions and to offer any meaningful accountability only intensified the sense of betrayal felt by the public. The court's verdict had shattered Labour's carefully cultivated image as a party of integrity, leaving many wondering how deep the corruption ran within the ranks of the party. Behind the scenes, Labour's leadership was scrambling to control the damage. Some party insiders were beginning to voice their concerns, fearing that the scandal could bring down not just Rayner, but the entire party. Whispers of leadership challenges grew louder, and MPs who had once been loyal to Rayner were now reconsidering their positions. Even Keir Starmer, the party leader, was not immune from criticism. His failure to act decisively in the wake of the scandal had cast doubt on his leadership abilities. Starmer had tried to distance himself from the controversy, but his reluctance to take strong action made him appear weak and indecisive. further eroding Labour's credibility. The pressure on him to act was mounting, with public trust in Labour at an all-time low. Many within the party feared that this scandal could be the beginning of the end for Labour's influence in British politics. The rise of Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, added another layer of complexity to the crisis. Farage had been quick to capitalise on Labour's failings, positioning his party as the only true alternative to the political establishment. As more voters grew disillusioned with Labour, many were turning to Reform UK as a viable option. Farage's ability to frame himself as a defender of democracy, in contrast to Labour's corruption, made his message all the more appealing to those who felt betrayed by the traditional political elites. With Reform UK gaining traction, the pressure on Labour to restore its reputation was mounting. However, the more the party tried to fight back, the more exposed it became. The scandal had not only cost Labour the trust of the public, but also its standing as a legitimate force in British politics. The road ahead for the party was unclear, and its survival depended on whether it could repair the damage and regain the trust of the electorate. However, with every passing day, the cracks in Labour's facade were becoming more difficult to ignore, and the future of the party seemed uncertain. The impact of the scandal surrounding Angela Rayner and the Labour Party has reached far beyond the immediate political consequences, leaving a lasting imprint on the British political landscape. As the scandal deepened, the once solid foundation of Labour's credibility began to crumble, giving rise to an era of public disillusionment and distrust. For weeks, the party had been scrambling to contain the damage, but each attempt seemed to fall short, only exposing the extent of the manipulation and dishonesty that had been concealed from the public. The revelations had stripped away the veneer of fairness and transparency that Labour had long claimed to embody, leaving behind a party that appeared more concerned with retaining power than protecting democratic principles. Angela Rayner's role in the scandal, once hailed as a promising figure within the party, became a focal point for the broader issues that had been festering beneath the surface of Labour's leadership. Her actions, initially seen as a desperate political maneuver to delay elections, had now been revealed to be part of a broader effort to suppress opposition and maintain control. This revelation exposed the dark reality behind Labour's promises of progress and fairness. As more leaked documents and testimonies came to light, it became increasingly clear that the delay of local elections was not a mere administrative error, but a calculated decision to weaken the rising influence of Reform UK and other opposition parties. The stakes were high, and the repercussions of this manipulation were far-reaching. The public, once loyal to Labour, now felt betrayed. For many, the party had abandoned its core principles in favour of maintaining power by any means necessary. The scandal had shifted the conversation from political policies to a broader discussion of Labour's integrity and the state of British democracy itself. At the heart of the issue was the question of accountability. While Rayner had attempted to deflect blame and distance herself from the fallout, the truth had already been exposed. Her actions and those of the Labour Party had irrevocably altered the trust voters once placed in them. The fallout was not just political, it was deeply personal for those who had believed in Labour's promises of justice and equality. The consequences were also felt within the party itself. Labour's leadership was divided, with some MPs calling for Rayner's resignation, while others feared that her removal could ignite a civil war within the party. Keir Starmer, who had once seemed to offer a fresh direction for the party, now found himself under intense pressure. His failure to act swiftly and decisively in the wake of the scandal had left him vulnerable to accusations of weakness and complicity. With Reform UK gaining traction and the public's faith in Labour shattered, the future of the party seemed uncertain. The scandal, however, wasn't just a political crisis. It was a defining moment for British politics, one that would shape the discourse for years to come. The questions of trust, accountability, and transparency raised by this scandal will linger long after the immediate fallout has subsided. As the scandal surrounding Angela Rayner and the Labour Party continued to unfold, it became increasingly clear that the party's future was hanging by a thread. The revelations had shaken the political establishment to its core, leaving Labour struggling to regain its footing. The impact on the party was far-reaching, with its once loyal supporters now questioning the integrity of its leadership. For many, the betrayal ran deep, as they had once trusted Labour to represent their interests and defend democratic values. Now, faced with the stark reality of manipulation and deception, that trust had been shattered. Calls for Rayner's resignation grew louder, not just from the opposition but from within her own party. Labour's internal divisions became more apparent, as MPs expressed growing frustration with the leadership's handling of the crisis. Some were pushing for swift action to remove Rayner, while others feared that doing so would only deepen the party's internal rifts. Meanwhile, Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, capitalized on Labour's turmoil, attracting disillusioned voters who had lost faith in the established political system. As Labour scrambled to manage the damage, it became increasingly clear that the party's political landscape had been forever altered by the scandal. The question now was whether Labour could survive this crisis or whether the damage had already been done beyond repair. See you again.